This question reminds me of a conversation I had actually recently with a patient of mine who is in recovery from alcoholism, has been for many years, has been sober and doing really well. And we were talking about planning her wedding, and she was getting sort of overwhelmed by the task and what it all meant. And again, this issue of the vows and what are appropriate vows at a wedding. What can you really promise? And I came up with this metaphor that we both found amusing. I said to her, well, you know, what if someone were to go to an AA meeting? Say it's you go to an AA meeting and they give you a chip, you know, to commemorate that you have been sober for 30 years. And everybody claps and applauds. And the problem is that you haven't been sober for 30 years. You haven't even been sober for a day yet. They're just giving it to you right now and saying, well, you know, we know you really, really want to be sober for 30 years, so we're going to give you this chip, and right now, prospectively, and then you can be sober for 30 years. And she laughed, and she said, oh gosh, that's it, isn't it? It just doesn't make any sense. Recovery, you have to do it day by day, you know, and every day you have to take a baby step, and you have to start every morning, and you're always one drink away from starting all over again. It's a challenge. It's a challenge that can bring you a lot of joy and can really be a huge, important part in your life, but it's one day at a time. And frankly, a relationship is a bit like that. It might seem an odd analogy, but this is the problem with weddings, is that you can't really stand in front of all these people and say, I promise to be with you forever, because no one can really make that promise. It may not even be something you want to do, you know, 10 years, 20 years down the line, who knows where you'll be, or what would be best for you. So, you know, the question becomes, what vows can you make? You know, the other problem with weddings, of course, is that you're standing in front of a whole lot of strangers, or near strangers, or family, or extended family, or who knows who's there. And of course, you know, a relationship is an enormously personal thing. So there's this other problem with weddings that's always made me a little uncomfortable with the ceremonies, which is just that you're putting something so personal in front of so many people. And of course, making this impossible promise. So I don't know. I have to assume you know this, because you wrote this having, you know, said in your question that you've read my opinions on weddings and so forth. So I guess I'll cut to the chase here, and we'll talk about vows. And you know, it's a really good question, which is, well, what is an appropriate vow at a wedding? And I think you start with, let's not look into the future too much, because that's where we run into trouble. Why don't we stay in the here and the now? Why don't we, instead of making promises we might not be able to keep, say things that we do mean right now, things that we can say, that we believe in and that we know. And I was at a wonderful commitment ceremony some years back. It was a lesbian commitment ceremony, actually. A couple had been together for 10 years, and they decided to celebrate it. And the vows were very wonderful. I can only paraphrase them, and I hope I heard them right, but the gist of it was, the first partner turned to her partner and said, ooh, it gets me all weepy. She said, you're the love of my life, and you're my sweetie pie, and you're my honey buns, and I love you. And the other partner looked into her partner's eyes, and she said, thank you for 10 wonderful years, and I hope we'll have many more. And I think, you know, you can see why people do weddings, right? They do it because they get all sentimental. And I'm as sentimental as the next person, and I love to cry at weddings. But what was wonderful about those vows was that neither one of them was making any promise they couldn't keep. But they were managing to express love for one another. And that was, there wasn't a dry eye in the house at that wedding, I'll tell you, or commitment ceremony or whatever it was. So let me wish you the very best of luck, and suggest that you make vows that you can keep, that instead of making promises, you simply say what you believe.